A huge chunk of the study advice floating around out there from professors, from well meaning relatives, from a lot of YouTube videos is basic. Sit at the front of the class, skim your textbook instead of reading every word cover to cover, get enough sleep. And look, that advice is genuinely good and genuinely useful, but it's also basic. You've heard it 100 times. Maybe you're like me, though. I'm a details nerd to an almost unhealthy degree. When I pick up a fighting game, I don't just want to play. I want to learn the frame data, every character's move set, all the matchups. And I'm the exact same way with studying. I want the advanced stuff, the weird, slightly nerdy techniques that hack the way your brain actually works and never show up in the standard list of tips. So if that's you too, good news. Today I've got 8 of those advanced study tips. Let's get into it. Tip 1, the Corson Technique for asking for help. This one comes from Walter Pauck's classic How to Study in College, and it's named after Dale Corson, the 8th president of Cornell, the same university that gave us the famous Cornell note-taking system, and a former engineering dean himself. Corson observed that students in math and science programs often have to fight through a tough problem one sentence at a time, slowly cracking it. But sometimes you hit a wall you genuinely can't get past on your own, and you need to ask the professor. Here's the technique. Before you go ask, pause and ask yourself one question. What exactly is it that I don't understand? What Corson wants you to avoid is the thing most students do. They walk up with a vague, general wave of the hand and say, I just don't get this, it's all confusing. Instead, you pick the problem apart sentence by sentence and pinpoint the precise spot where your understanding breaks. Okay, I follow this part, this step makes sense, this transition is fine, but right here, this specific move, this is where I lose the thread. After this point, I'm fine again. When you can do that, 2 things happen. 1, you impress the professor with how much effort you actually put in, which never hurts. But 2, and far more importantly, you're training the genuinely vital skill of recognizing confusion and chasing it down to its exact source. That ability pays off in everything you ever learn from here on out. Tip 2. Learn facts fast with spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is the practice of reviewing things at increasingly longer intervals, and it's brutally efficient because it works with your brain instead of against it. The system is simple. Facts you know well, you see rarely. Facts you keep missing, you see often. And the reason it's so powerful is the timing. It pushes you to recall a piece of information at roughly the last moment before you'd forget it, so your brain has to strain to retrieve it. That strain is exactly what encodes the memory more durably. You learn more in less time. The best way to actually do this is with spaced repetition software rather than paper index cards, because the software handles the scheduling for you. The big, free, general-purpose one is Anki. You can build your own card decks for literally any subject, or download shared decks other people have already made. When I was studying Japanese, I also used a specialized one called WaniKani that was incredibly effective for drilling kanji and vocabulary. The act of building your own deck has real learning value, but the real magic is in the spaced scheduling. It'll consistently beat plain linear flashcard review on paper. Tip 3. The Method of Loci. We're getting more advanced now. The Method of Loci, also called the Memory Palace, goes all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome, and it's the technique memory champions have used for centuries. It exploits the fact that human brains are extraordinarily good at remembering spatial information. The classic version, you mentally associate chunks of what you're memorizing with different rooms of a house you know well. Then take a mental walk through it. Quick example from my Japanese days. The kanji for king is pronounced o, just a simple o sound. That's actually annoying to memorize because a plain o doesn't lend itself to a good mnemonic. So I adapt the method of Loci. What does a king sit on? A throne. And what's a throne if you're working with 5-year-old humor? A toilet. And what do you say when you smell a bad one? Oh. So now king lives in the bathroom of my mental house, And I can even physically tape flashcards on my actual bathroom walls and study them as I walk through. Now, the method of Loki is genuinely hard to use, and for small amounts of material, you're usually better off with plain spaced repetition or mnemonics. But if you've got a lot to memorize and nothing else has clicked, it's a powerful tool to have. Tip 4. Hack akrasia. Akrasia is a term that goes all the way back to Plato. It basically means acting against your own better judgment, a lack of command over yourself. There's a related idea from behavioral economics called hyperbolic discounting. We discount the value of a reward the further into the future it sits, which in plain terms is why we procrastinate. We chase fun things with immediate payoffs that don't align with our real values, and we avoid the things that do align with our values because their reward is delayed. Studying pays off in 3 weeks. Scrolling pays off in 3 seconds. You can fight akrasia 2 ways. First, use a commitment device. Bind your future self to actually doing the thing. There are apps built specifically for this that let you put real stakes, sometimes literal money, on the line if you don't follow through, and they work shockingly well for forcing consistency. Second, add a short-term reward to completing the task to counteract that delayed reward problem. Let yourself watch an episode of a show after you finish an assignment, or use a gamified habit app that gives you points and levels for completing your study sessions. The goal is just to make sure the only reward isn't that far off akrasia-inducing one. Tip 5. Improve the Pomodoro Technique. You've probably heard of the Pomodoro Technique. Set a timer for about 25 minutes, work on one single task, then take a short break. Tons of people use it and it's great, but there are upgrades most people miss. So let me rapid fire 2. First, experiment with the intervals. The classic 25 on, 5 off isn't sacred. Some people do far better with a longer block, say 45 minutes of work and a 15-minute break. The 25 is a starting point, not a law. Find your rhythm. Second, and this one's gold, keep a piece of paper next to you during each session, and every time something pulls at your attention, a phone buzz, the itch to check social media, a random thought, write it down instead of acting on it. This does 2 things. In the moment, if it was something actually urgent, you can deal with it during your break. But over weeks and months, that paper becomes a log of your distractions, and you start seeing the patterns. Oh, it's always my phone. Okay, do not disturb goes on before every session now. Oh, it's always one specific website. Okay, I'll use a site blocker extension during study time. You're not just resisting distractions, you're diagnosing and eliminating them. Tip 6. Use both focused and diffuse thinking. This is a concept I love, and it's laid out beautifully in Barbara Oakley's A Mind for Numbers. Picture Magnus Carlsen, now the greatest chess player alive, but back in 2004, at just 13, he played the legendary Garry Kasparov, then the best in the world, and held him to a draw. And if you watch that game, there's this remarkable detail. Mid-match, young Carlsen gets up and wanders around, glancing at other players' boards. He literally stood up and walked off while the game was still going. What he was doing, whether he knew it or not, was tapping into diffuse thinking. Here's the distinction. Focused thinking uses your prefrontal cortex to lock onto one specific problem and concentrate hard, but it keeps the rest of your brain quiet. Diffuse thinking is the opposite, a relaxed, wandering mode where distant, unrelated parts of your brain start connecting ideas in new ways. And here's the key insight for learning. When you're grappling with a genuinely new concept, you need diffuse mode to truly get it, to tie it to everything else you already know. If you only ever grind in focused mode, staring at the problem and nothing else, you'll often have a harder time cracking it. Focused mode is fantastic for problems you already understand and processes you've done before. So you use them in combination. Focus hard, then step away and let it marinate. The walk, the shower, the wander around the room, That's diffuse mode doing the work focus can't. Tip 7. Gauge your classes. This one's about pace, specifically the gap between how fast your professor moves and how fast you can actually absorb. If your professor tends to blow through material faster than you can take notes or process it, don't just suffer through it. Take steps to close the gap. The most effective one? Read the relevant chapter before the lecture. Even a quick skim of what's coming primes your brain so that in class, you're recognizing and deepening ideas instead of meeting them cold for the first time. And the other thing, which I cannot emphasize enough, if the pace is genuinely too fast, ask questions during class or go ask for help afterward. Professors are literally there to help you. Use them. Most students are too self-conscious to raise their hand, and they leave a huge resource completely untapped. Tip 8. Start your problem sets alone. Last one, and it comes from a mistake I made. Sophomore year, I had a statistics class, and I had a study partner who'd come to my dorm for basically every homework assignment so we could do it together from the start. I got a decent grade, but I wouldn't do it that way again, and here's why. When you start a problem set with a partner, you rob yourself of the chance to find your own gaps. Two people hitting the same problem at once, if one of them can do a step, the other one nods along, goes, yeah, I get that, and moves on. But you didn't actually get it. You latched onto their understanding and glossed over your own blind spot. Whereas if you do that first pass alone, you're forced to hit your own walls, identify exactly where you're shaky, and shore those spots up. Then you bring it to the group to compare and finish. Start alone, find your gaps, then collaborate. So those are the 8. The Corson technique for asking smarter questions, spaced repetition for facts, the method of Loci for big memory loads, hacking akrasia with commitment devices and short-term rewards, upgrading your Pomodoro sessions, combining focused and diffuse thinking, gauging your class's pace, and starting problem sets solo. I know that was a longer one than usual. If you've got questions about any specific tip, drop them in the comments and I'll jump in. If this was helpful, a like genuinely supports the channel, and you can subscribe for new study videos every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.